Game designer Brendan utilizes principles derived from studies wherein scientists use mazes to observe how organisms utilize memory to learn, adapt, and navigate their environment. Recognizing that memory is integral to progress, Brendan draws inspiration from these concepts when designing his games. One day, Brendan, his wife Claire, and their daughter Sam enjoy a pleasant time at the beach. After a brief rest, Sam sets off to collect shells with her Curious George toy, promising to stay out of the water. However, while engrossed in her search, Sam loses the toy to the waves and ventures into the water to retrieve it. Regrettably, she is unable to overcome the strong currents and does not return. The family extends full support to the parents during the funeral, yet Brendan and Claire remain deeply affected. Claire is overwhelmed by the feeling that the situation is unreal, while Brendan struggles to carry on, frequently breaking down in his daughter's room. A few months later, Claire decides it's time to relocate and begins packing up Sam's room. Brendan, however, is not prepared and becomes distressed, imploring his wife to reinstate everything as it was. As he handles his daughter's favorite books, he notices that Berenstain Bears is spelled with an A, although he recalls it being spelled with an E. Later that night, unable to sleep, Brendan is startled by a noise. Armed with a bat, he investigates and nearly attacks, only to discover that it's his brother-in-law Matt rummaging through the fridge. Brendan and Matt enjoy a late-night snack and conversation, during which Brendan inquires about the book title. He is pleased to learn that Matt also recalls it being spelled with an E. Struggling to sleep, Brendan turns to the internet for answers and discovers numerous articles discussing the phenomenon. Many individuals share his memory and suspect a conspiracy, but Brendan eventually encounters the concept of the Mandela effect, wherein groups of people collectively harbor false memories. The usual explanation involves alternate timelines or parallel universes, and it derives its name from the widespread belief that Mandela had died in prison. The following morning, as Claire prepares to return to work, Brendan observes a family photo on their refrigerator depicting the Griffith Observatory. When he inquires, Claire affirms that she recalls the picture being taken there. Brendan, however, recalls capturing that same image at the Pacific Science Center. Claire dismisses his recollection as confusion and returns to her work. Later, Brendan shares with Matt his discoveries about the Mandela effect, presenting a thorough explanation and numerous examples, such as the reported death of Nelson Mandela, Darth Vader's iconic quote, and the spelling of Looney Tunes. Brendan is convinced that they may be transitioning between parallel realities or existing within a simulated environment, but Matt does not take his theory seriously. In the subsequent days, Brendan delves further into the phenomenon, immersing himself in numerous documentaries on topics such as string theory and the potential existence of a real-life matrix. Engrossed in the subject matter, Brendan diligently takes copious notes, perhaps as a means of engaging his mind and diverting his attention from his sorrow. One afternoon, Brendan seeks guidance from a priest, pondering the reason behind God's choice to end the life of a child like Sam. The priest clarifies that Sam's passing was not part of God's plan or desire, but rather a consequence of free will, widely regarded as one of the most valuable gifts bestowed upon humanity by God. Upon returning home, Brendan delves into an investigation of free will, consumed by his preoccupation with the subject. Sometime later, Brendan reconnects with Matt, persisting in discussing the matter with him. Matt reveals that he consulted a neurologist friend, who explained that our brains are not flawless. Memories become jumbled and numerous gaps are filled in with external information. However, Brendan remains steadfast in his refusal to entertain the possibility that these occurrences are purely coincidental. Later, during dinner, Claire expresses her concern for Brendan, noting his recent emotional withdrawal and urging him to open up about his troubles. In response, Brendan prompts Claire to describe the Monopoly Man, and when she mentions a monocle, he points out that the game box depiction does not feature the same detail. Subsequently, Brendan presents Sam's Curious George book, insisting that the monkey in the drawings used to have a tail, even recalling that Sam's plush toy exhibited the same feature. Despite Claire's discomfort with Brendan invoking their daughter's passing, he persists, referencing Claire's own statement after the funeral that the situation didn't seem real. At the point when he begins discussing real factors moving, Claire snaps and reproves Brendan for declining to continue on and emptying his pain into this imbecilic fixation, all things being equal. In a little while, Brendan and Claire go out on a twofold with Matt and his new beau. Brendan is out to lunch and scarcely giving any consideration to the discussion, so he attempts to run away to the bar, yet Matt reminds him he and Claire need to help one another. Brendan concedes that is valid and gets back to the table. Anyway, when he returns home, Brendan bounces on the PC again to explore the reproduction hypothesis, which says we live in a PC-customized reality. Brendan's notes develop and he fires keeping up aboard, frantic to find evidence of an equal universe where Sam is as yet alive. He watches recordings of celebrities discussing the subject like Elon Musk and Neil deGrasse Tyson, and ultimately he runs over the name Roland Fuchs, who should be dealing with a method for demonstrating the recreation. Anyway, the video he finds on sites isn't working any longer, so he needs to go to robbery locales that keep a reinforcement of it. The document he downloads is defiled, however, by utilizing extraordinary programming, he figures out how to fix it. The video shows Specialist Fuchs giving a talk about the reproduction hypothesis, yet sadly it gets undermined once more and Brendan's left with nothing. Declining to surrender, Brendan looks where Fuchs is working these days and records a video message for him. Days pass and Brendan never hears back from Fuchs, so he goes to the college to contact the specialist face-to-face. Anyway, Fuchs is excessively occupied and he lacks the opportunity to hear an irregular fan's meandering aimlessly. Sometime thereafter, Brendan attempts to be a superior spouse and starts getting playful with Claire, yet he stops in it since he wants to hear Sam calling for him. Baffled, Claire lets him know he ought to see a sorrow guide. The following day, as opposed to seeing an instructor as he guaranteed, Brendan appears at Fuchs' home and persuades him to provide him with a couple of moments of his time. Fuchs makes sense of that the Mandela impact is only an instance of phony recollections, but he likewise believes they're breadcrumbs left by the reenactment we live in misfiring after a framework update. Brendan calls attention to that on the off chance that the truth is only a PC code. He ought to have the option to hack it, yet Fuchs imagines that is ludicrous and takes him to the college. On their way there, they examine the chance of the world existing simply because a cognizant being is noticing it. Brendan looks at it to video games and how they possibly load a region when a player enters it. The remainder of the time those regions don't exist. So rather than hacking the recreation, what he really wants to do is overburden it to overpower the processor. Just an exceptionally strong machine could do something like this, and Fuchs uncovers this college has a quantum PC. They enter the lab together, yet when Fuchs is making sense of how to enter a code, they're intruded on by specialist monitoring, who doesn't endorse Brendan's presence. The pair promptly returns to the specialist's home, where Fuchs makes sense of he thinks the reenactment attempted to stop him since he's a bug in the framework, and reminds Brendan that thoughts are risky things. Brendan stresses assuming the reenactment is sporting or needs power, contrasting the being behind it with political and corporate power. Sometime thereafter, Brendan dreams of Sam's passing and awakens when he hears her calling for him once more. He races to Sam's room and sees a human shadow, which out of nowhere messes up and vanishes. He attempts to go for a drive to clear his psyche, however he can't quit seeing the world as a monster chain of code associated with a quantum PC. In the long run, he nods off in the vehicle and awakens in an irregular rear entryway downtown. Unexpectedly, he hears a terrible sharp sound and he shouts in torment as reality begins messing up, just to flicker and awaken in his standard bed out of nowhere. At the point when Brendan leaves the room, he's stunned to see Sam in her own room, and Claire comes to drag her to the washroom. Anyway, when he attempts to follow them, he just finds his better half washing her teeth. Brendan believes he's going off the deep end, and Claire makes an honest effort to comfort him. Subsequently, Brendan goes to the library to pick a lot of books on quantum processing and starts dealing with a code that could overburden the recreation. The following couple of days, Brendan just invests his energy coding, which stresses Claire. One evening, Sam shows up in her folks' room and moves into bed since she had a bad dream. Brendan dozes calmly close to her, yet in the first part of the day, he awakens to a vacant bed. Thinking it was a fantasy, Brendan goes first floor. However, this time Sam is there as though nothing occurred. Claire and Matt treat her ordinarily as well, so Brendan calls everybody he knows to validate his intuitions. No one recalls Sam kicking the bucket, so reality has been modified. He attempts to talk about this with Fuchs, however he won't answer his calls. Brendan thinks the reproduction gave him his girl back, so he would stop the production of the code. However, he couldn't care less. He's glad to have Sam back. The family gets to know each other and is exceptionally content until one night when Claire awakens from a horrible bad dream in a horrendous state. She swears she's okay. However, the following day, Brendan finds the morning meal consuming and Claire scattering. Not entirely set in stone to encourage her, Brendan takes the family to paint some earthenware together. Unexpectedly, he sees breaks showing up on his pot and Claire gets forceful, crushing items on the floor since they aren't utilizing the variety she needs. Brendan chooses to get back and attempts to make Claire rest. However, she continues gazing at Sam and going crazy, saying the young lady ought not be there. Stressed that the truth shift is making his significant other debilitated, Brendan asks Matt to mind and hurries to Fuchs' home, just to be gotten by the specialist's better half. It turns out he self-erased 2 months prior since he wasn't viewed in a serious way by the science local area. As Brendan naturally suspects he saw Fuchs only 2 days prior, a break shows up on the glass, which he likewise considers a sign from the reenactment. Still up in the air to make things right, Brendan hurries to his home and starts chipping away at the code once more. He likewise records a video for his family in the event the recreation kills him like he thinks it killed Fuchs. While Brendan works, Matt deals with Claire, who has become mental. At the point when the code is at long last prepared, Brendan goes to the college and attempts to get to the quantum PC, just to be impeded by monitoring, who attempts to call security. Brendan hops on him to stop him. However, he unintentionally pushes excessively hard and monitoring hits his head when he arrives on the floor, immediately passing on. Brendan feels exceptionally remorseful, yet he actually takes monitoring's card key and continues onward. When he arrives at the PC, Brendan inserts his code with a USB stick, and he watches the numbers go by as the PC lights flash. Before long, the machine begins to make an odd clamor, so Brendan surges outside just to find that the parking area is vacant and his vehicle is no more. In a matter of moments, he winds up on a transport and he gets a call from his significant other saying she doesn't feel better. At that point, he sees a traveler messing up as she goes through the transport floor, and a couple close by have misfiring faces as well. Brendan gets off the transport and goes through the city, seeing a wide range of errors going on. The time continually changes, the trees go through various varieties, and there are 2 moons overhead. In the long run, Brendan returns home and hurries to hold his better half and little girl close as the climate around them additionally messes up like there's no tomorrow. Claire's face messes up as well and she shouts in torment while the 2 moons crash overhead prior to everything goes completely dark. Then the code shows up on the screen as the universe reboots itself all along of presence, going through dinosaurs, lost civic establishments, wars, and the typical significant snapshots of mankind's set of experiences. When the reboot at last stops, Brendan is happy to be near the ocean with his family once more. This time when Sam specifies she'll go searching for shells, Brendan makes her abandon the inquisitive George, saving her life.